edition of the Rochester Public Library. Welcome to Book Sandwiched In. We ask that you please silence your cell phones at this time. Our thanks go to those who help fund programs like these through FFRPL, the dedicated FFRPL committee members who curate and organize these events, our guest speakers who so graciously share their time and talents with us, the library staff who help with our setup and production, and the thousands of people who attend each year in person and online. We are live streaming the formal portion of today's program to the library's YouTube channel at Rochester Public Library, New York. If you need to access the induction loop service in the auditorium, please adjust your hearing aid to the T switch. FFRPL raises funds, presents programs, supports special projects, helps to create specialized spaces, and purchases supplemental materials and equipment for the Rochester Public Library. We also manage restricted funds that provide supplemental material support to 62 eligible libraries in Monroe, Ontario, Wayne, Livingston, Orleans, and Genesee counties. Last week at Rochester Public Library's All-Staff Day, Mayor Malik Evans expressed his continued appreciation for libraries and for the impact they have on the community, and he thanked the staff for their service, describing the work being done at RPL as transformational. He mentioned several representative examples of the library's capital projects, innovative programs, special initiatives, and resources, including the new Northeast Branch Library, the Maplewood Community Library expansion, slated to reopen early 2026, the Sully Branch Library's new Aviation Station program, Central Library's esports team, the Liberators, the Raising a Reader literacy program, RPL Go, the new mobile library, Central's Business Insight Center, or BIC, and the distribution of MiFi units, which Mayor Evans reminded us that we are leading in digital equity. Every project that the mayor mentioned was supported by FFRPL, or will be in the case of the new Northeast branch. We also invite you to attend Local History's upcoming event, Writing the Story of Queen Catherine Montour and Awakening the Montour Legacy, with historical novelist Cynthia G. Neal and Jamie L. Montour. FFRPL is supporting that event as well, which will be held here in KGA this Saturday, November 1st. You can visit rockcitylibrary.org for more information. And we thank our donors, as always, who make all of our work possible. Today, Stephen Orr will review Is a River Alive by Robert McFarlane. Focusing on three landscapes in Ecuador, Southeast India, and Canada, McFarlane explores the ancient idea that rivers should be recognized as living beings in imagination and law. He notes, quote, "This book is a journey into an idea that changes the world, the idea that a river is alive. What does such a recognition mean for perception, law, and politics?" End quote. Semi-retired journalist Stephen Orr was a reporter at the Democrat and Chronicle, specializing in the environment and conservation. He is a board member of Genesee River Watch, a nonprofit that works to improve water quality and public access to the Genesee River. Please join me in welcoming Stephen Orr to our podium.
Hi, everybody hear me okay? Thank you all for coming. This is my second round giving one of these talks, and hopefully I can finish it more rapidly than I did the first one. I ran over the first time. Okay. All right, so we're going to start. Is a River Alive is a work of nonfiction by the English writer Robert McFarlane. McFarlane is 49. He's classically educated and is a professor at Cambridge, and he writes with the erudition you'd expect of someone with that background. He's written six books or so. Broadly, they're about human interaction with the natural world. He's won numerous awards. The Times calls him Britain's finest nature writer. Is a River Alive explores the idea that rivers and other natural systems, such as forests or mountains, have a right to exist and to be free of human depredation, and that these rights should be enshrined in law and enforceable in court. There's a growing movement to enact laws recognizing the rights of nature, including in New York. More on that in a moment. But in this book, McFarland treads a step deeper into the rights debate by examining the belief that rivers and other natural ecosystems are alive as sentient beings and thus deserve to live unmolested. He traveled the world to 3 locations where action has been taken to enable the idea that rivers are alive. He writes first of a trip to the Rio Los Cedros that rises in a cloud forest in the Ecuadorian Andes, where mining, forestry, and farming interests have degraded or ruined many once pristine rivers. But rights of nature language was written into the Ecuadorian Constitution in 2008. And on the strength of lobbying by indigenous people who believe rivers and forests together form a living being. In 2021, activists used that language remarkably to obtain a court ruling that stopped a mining project in Los Cedros. McFarland writes next about Chennai, a sprawling city on the east coast of India. It once had 3 clean rivers that flowed through the city into the Bay of Bengal, but they've been all but destroyed by sanitary and industrial pollution and infilling that exacerbates flooding in the city. He relates that in 2017, state judges ruled that the Ganges and Yamuna rivers, both considered sacred in India, should be recognized as living entities and legal persons. Subsequently, a court in the state that includes Chennai issued a similar ruling. That's pending. How that might be used to improve the somewhat wretched state of their rivers remains to be seen. Finally, McFarland visits northern Quebec to see what he called one of the last large intact ecosystems in the world. Intact, maybe, but not unspoiled. Northern Quebec is laced with vast rivers that flow south into the St. Lawrence River and the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Many of them, most of them actually, have been dammed and the wilderness around them despoiled for the generation of hydroelectricity, most of which is sold to New York and New England, and which is probably powering the lights in this room at this moment. The land there is legally under the control of indigenous First Nations who have drawn a line at the Mutchaka-Chippewa, or Magpie River. The Innu, who have lived in the boreal forest there for thousands of years, believe rivers are living beings. In 2021, the Innu Leadership Council and the Quebec regional government adopted sister resolutions declaring the Mutchaka to have legal personhood with attendant rights to flow freely, be protected, and preserved. So what I've just given you is a quick and dry recitation, but the book itself is anything but dry. McFarland writes lyrically about the beauty of the cloud forest, the fierce majesty of the Mutchaka, the remarkable signs of life among the polluted rivers in Chennai. He walks, climbs, and kayaks with fascinating people, and through them tells stories of fungi, sea turtles, beluga whales, butterflies, dragonflies, and of people who live lives filled with both happiness and sadness. It's a fascinating cast of characters that he surrounds himself with in these 3 locations. It's really an engaging travelogue by a naturalist philosopher, and for that reason alone, you should read it. But I won't lie, there are passages that I thought were trite or pretentious or hyperbolic. I got off to a terrible start with this book when in the first few pages he cited a transparently nonsensical story about Lake Ontario being so polluted that one could use it to develop photographic film. Really, he did. But on balance, leaving that aside, I would certainly recommend this book for anyone interested in protecting our natural environment. It's very thought-provoking in that regard. But I struggle with what to say about the idea that natural systems should be given legal rights. I've always thought that rights should be reserved for humans. But the concept is being embraced in some corners of the world with great success. In New Zealand and Ecuador, for example, numerous communities in the U.S., including Potsdam and Canton in northern New York, have adopted local right of nature laws, usually in response to some unpopular development proposal. Rights of nature legislation focused on the Great Lakes has been adopted by the city of Toledo and has been introduced in the New York Assembly, though it doesn't seem to have much support and hasn't moved out of committee for years now. But as for rivers, lakes, mountains, or forests being alive, I accept that there have always been and still are people who earnestly believe that to be so, even if I do not. It's a matter of personal choice of what you want to believe, but certainly many people do. McFarland makes a clever point that we should think again about the familiar construct that corporations are living things in the sense that they have the same legal rights as humans and some extra rights on top. That concept is just as strange as considering a river or a mountain to have life. He said people need to unlearn their beliefs that, say, the Genesee River is not as deserving of rights as General Motors. In the end, this story is about people envisioning new ways or reviving old ways of protecting the natural world. They recognize that existing laws and norms aren't always adequate. They have something there, surely. There's no doubt that rivers, as much as any natural systems, have been pummeled by thoughtless human action. Throughout history, they've been used to carry away waste and pollutants, harnessed to grind grain, turn gears, and produce electricity. They've been widened, narrowed, channeled, dammed, and buried. The Genesee, which flows just beyond this building, suffered many of these affronts. For generations, Rochester and other communities used it as a dumping ground for sewage, industrial waste, and trash. This practice has mostly stopped, though not entirely. The Genesee has 15 to 20 dams that completely alter the flow of the river, including the huge one at Mount Morris that was built to prevent flooding in Rochester. The river improbably also was deepened by this massive construction project early in the 20th century by 5 to 10 feet in the whole section of downtown. Again, to increase the carrying capacity of the river and prevent flooding that used to actually cause huge problems in downtown Rochester. Of course, as part of that, one of the river's crowning glories, the High Falls, used to be 10 feet higher before it was lowered in that construction project. The falls used to be much wider and grander, too. Old pictures will show you, before development ate away at the edges. The Genesee was never buried, as some rivers have been, but several tributaries in northeast Rochester were buried, and they still are. It was a convenience. Instead of having a river to worry about, they would just put it in a pipe and build on top of it. So the Genesee was engineered in the same way that rivers throughout the world have been. How would a rights of nature law apply to a river like the Genesee, which has long since been altered for human convenience? Would you use it to tear down the Mount Morris Dam or close large dairy farms whose manure taints the water? Could you use it to force improvements in flagging sewage treatment plants or force better manure control in those farms? You know, in a reflective moment, a man who accompanied McFarland on his expedition down the Muchika in Quebec asked what the river, if it is sentient, really wants. Might it welcome the dams that Hydro-Quebec desires to build there? Or, he said, is the idea that rivers are sentient, quote, fraught with the risk of ventriloquizing? McFarland responded that that's the crux that needs solving, for sure. He said, the issue is not who speaks for the river, but what does the river say? And that's it. Short and sweet.